Pay attention to what you're about to see. This is helmet camera footage from rescue diver Johan Eriksson, captured on September 3, 2018, in the waters off Greenland's eastern coast. Look closely at the creature's mouth, that massive jaw frozen in death, still filled with blood. See those shapes between the teeth? Those aren't fish, those are human remains. 15 people to be exact, all crew members from the fishing trawler Helena's Pride, all consumed in a single attack. What you're looking at is something that shouldn't exist, a prehistoric marine predator that killed an entire boat full of people in less than 10 seconds. This is the story of how that happened, and the terrifying discovery that came after. You know that feeling when you're out on the ocean and you look down into the deep water, and for just a second you wonder what's looking back up at you? For the crew of the Helena's Pride, that nightmare became real on a calm morning in early September 2018. The Helena's Pride was a 32-foot commercial fishing vessel based out of Nuuk, Greenland. She'd been working these waters for nearly 15 years without incident. The boat was owned and captained by Marcus Johansen, a 48-year-old fisherman who'd spent his entire adult life on the water. Marcus wasn't just experienced, he was careful, almost obsessively so. He ran safety drills monthly, kept his emergency equipment maintained, and never took chances with the weather or ice conditions. That morning, Marcus had a full crew of 15 aboard. His younger brother Eric served as first mate. There was Sophie Nielsen, 29, the only woman on the crew and one of the most skilled net handlers Marcus had ever worked with. Thomas Christensen, the ship's cook, who made the best fish stew anyone had ever tasted. Young Peter Hansen, just 22, on his third season and proving himself a natural sailor. 11 more experienced fishermen, all locals, all with families waiting back in Nuuk. They'd left port at 4:30 that morning, heading for their usual fishing grounds about 85 nautical miles northeast of the coast. The weather was perfect. Clear skies, light winds, calm seas. The kind of day that reminds you why you became a fisherman in the first place. By 9:15 a.m., they'd already hauled in a decent catch and were preparing to move to a new location Marcus knew about, a spot where the fish always seemed to gather this time of year. Nobody on that boat had any idea they were being hunted. At 9:47 a.m., the Greenland Coast Guard received an emergency distress call from the Helena's Pride. The transmission lasted exactly 11 seconds. What they heard would haunt every operator who was on duty that day. First, there was Marcus's voice, calm but urgent. "Mayday, mayday! This is fishing vessel Helena's Pride. Position north 71 degrees. Then a sound. Not an explosion. Not the crash of waves or the groan of metal. It was something rising from the water, a rush of displacement so massive it created its own roar. Then screams. Multiple voices all at once. The sound of wood splintering, of the boat structure giving way. And Marcus again, no longer calm, just raw terror. "Oh God, it's..." Static. The Coast Guard immediately dispatched their nearest rescue helicopter, which was conducting a routine patrol about 40 minutes away. They also sent out emergency broadcasts to any vessels in the area. 2 cargo ships and another fishing boat altered course toward the Helena's Pride's last known position, but they were over an hour away. The rescue helicopter, with a crew of 4 including pilot Lars Anderson and rescue diver Johan Eriksson, reached the coordinates at 10:28 a.m. What they found defied explanation. The ocean was littered with debris. Pieces of the Helena's Pride floated in a rough circle about 50 yards across. Life preservers, fishing nets, personal belongings. One of the boat's diesel engines, somehow torn completely free from its mounting. The helicopter circled lower, and that's when they saw the blood. The water wasn't just red, it was thick with it, an almost solid mass spreading out from the center of the wreckage. But here's what made it even more horrific. There were no bodies, no survivors clinging to debris, no one in the water calling for help, just wreckage and blood and an eerie silence broken only by the helicopter's rotors. Lars brought the helicopter down to about 30 feet above the surface. Johan, strapped into his safety harness and equipped with his helmet camera, prepared to deploy. The water was unnaturally calm, almost glassy, despite all the debris. And then Johan saw it. "Lars," he said over the radio, his voice tight. "Lars, there's something in the water. Something big." At first, it looked like a section of the boat's hull, gray-green and mottled, about 10 feet across. But it was moving, not drifting with the current, moving with purpose. Johan's helmet camera captured the moment it surfaced. Let me paint you a picture of what that camera recorded, because this footage would become the most analyzed piece of evidence in maritime history. The water broke apart as something massive rose from below. First came the head, reptilian, angular, covered in scales that shifted between gray and teal depending on how the light hit them. The skull alone was 15 feet long, with 3 horn-like spines jutting back from the crown. The eye that faced the camera was the size of a dinner plate, pale yellow with a vertical slit pupil that contracted in the sudden sunlight. And then came the jaws. They opened impossibly wide, revealing rows of serrated teeth, each one 8 to 10 inches long. But it was what was inside those jaws that made Johan Eriksson vomit into his helmet and nearly pass out. The creature's mouth was full. Human limbs protruded between teeth. Pieces of orange and yellow safety gear, the colors the Helena's Pride crew wore, were visible, soaked in blood. Bodies, or what remained of them, were compressed together in that massive maw, like the creature hadn't even bothered to swallow yet. "Get us up!" Johan screamed. "Get us up now!" Lars pulled the helicopter into a steep climb just as the creature's head tracked their movement. For 3 seconds, the animal stared up at them with what looked like curiosity. Then it submerged again, disappearing into the depths with its horrific cargo still visible in its mouth. The helicopter crew radioed the Coast Guard immediately. The response was disbelief. "Repeat your last transmission," the operator said. "You're reporting a what?" "I don't know what to call it," Lars replied, his voice shaking. It's like a sea serpent or a dragon or something prehistoric. It's massive. And it has the crew in its mouth. All of them. They're dead. They're all dead." The Coast Guard alerted the Greenland Marine Research Institute and the Danish Navy, which maintains a presence in Greenlandic waters. Within 2 hours, 2 naval vessels were en route, along with a team of marine biologists led by Dr. Astrid Sørensen, one of the world's leading experts in Arctic marine life. When Johan sent them his helmet camera footage, Dr. Sørensen watched it 3 times in silence. Then she made a call that would change everything. "We need weapons," she told the Coast Guard commander. "Heavy weapons, harpoons, depth charges, whatever you have. That thing is still in the area, and it's already killed 15 people. If there are more boats nearby, they need to get out of those waters immediately." For the next 36 hours, every vessel within 100 miles of the attack site was ordered to evacuate the area. The Danish Navy established a perimeter. Sonar teams worked around the clock, trying to track the creature's movements, and Dr. Sørensen assembled her team, trying to figure out what they were dealing with. The footage from Johan's helmet camera was sent to marine biology departments around the world. The responses were nearly uniform. Impossible. What the camera had captured looked like a mosasaur or a plesiosaur, marine reptiles that went extinct 66 million years ago. But the image quality was crystal clear. This wasn't a hoax or a misidentification. This was real. On September 5th, at 6:15 a.m., the creature surfaced again. This time near one of the Danish Navy vessels. The ship's deck guns opened fire immediately, but the creature was fast, terrifyingly fast for something its size. It dove before the rounds could hit, but not before the ship's cameras got clear footage. The creature was at least 60 feet long, with a serpentine body, 4 paddle-like flippers, and that massive toothed skull with its distinctive spines. Dr. Sørensen made the call. They were going to kill it. Not capture it, not study it in the wild, kill it. The risk was too great. Every hour that thing remained in these waters was an hour when another boat, another crew, could meet the same fate as the Helena's Pride. The Danish Navy deployed specialized equipment designed for submarine warfare, depth charges calibrated to detonate at specific depths. Sonar teams tracked the creature as it moved through the water column about 2 miles from the naval perimeter. At 2:37 p.m. on September 5th, they had a solid lock on its position, about 300 feet down and moving slowly. The first depth charge detonated beneath the creature, forcing it toward the surface. The second caught it broadside. The third hit directly above it. When the creature surfaced this time, it was thrashing, clearly injured. A naval harpoon gun, the kind designed to punch through submarine hulls, fired 3 times. All 3 struck home. The creature's movements became more frantic, more desperate. Then it rolled onto its side, and the ocean around it turned red. It took another 6 hours for the creature to die. Even wounded, even impaled by 3 massive harpoons, it fought. Marine predators are survivors, built to endure. But eventually, the blood loss and trauma were too much. At 8:43 p.m., the creature's movement stopped. The nightmare, it seemed, was over. They towed the creature's body to a secure facility in Nuuk. The Danish government immediately classified the operation, but word had already gotten out. Fishing communities up and down Greenland's coast were terrified. The families of the Helena's Pride crew were demanding answers, demanding to see the bodies of their loved ones. But there were no bodies to return, not intact ones anyway. Dr. Sorensen assembled a team of 12 specialists for the necropsy, the animal equivalent of an autopsy. They worked in a refrigerated warehouse normally used for processing fish, the only facility large enough to accommodate a 60-foot marine reptile. The creature was laid out on a reinforced platform, and even in death, it was magnificent and terrible. The necropsy began on September 7th. Dr. Sorensen's team took measurements, tissue samples, scale samples, everything they could document. The creature's scales were unlike anything in modern marine biology, thicker than crocodile hide, with an underlayer that seemed to provide both flexibility and armor. The teeth showed wear patterns consistent with a predator that fed on large prey. The musculature suggested an animal capable of incredible bursts of speed and power, but it was when they opened the stomach that the true horror of what had happened became clear. Inside the creature's stomach were the remains of the Helena's Pride's crew. Not complete bodies, the digestive process had already begun, but enough to identify through DNA and personal effects. Sophie Nielsen's wedding ring, Thomas Christensen's wallet, somehow still intact in a pocket. Peter Hansen's watch, a graduation gift from his parents that he never took off. And then Dr. Sorensen's team found something that made this case even more disturbing. Mixed in with the remains of the Helena's Pride crew were older bones, much older. Human bones that had been in the creature's digestive system for years, maybe decades. They found fragments of what appeared to be a military uniform, Soviet naval issue based on the fabric analysis and the style of buttons. They found a dog tag that had somehow survived, corroded but still readable. The name was partially obscured, but the date was clear, 1987. Dr. Sorensen cross-referenced that information with maritime records. In November 1987, a Soviet fishing trawler called the Pevek disappeared in these exact waters with a crew of 11. The official report blamed ice and storm conditions, but the vessel was never found. No wreckage, no bodies, nothing. Just gone. The implications were staggering. This creature had been hunting in these waters for at least 30 years, probably longer. The Helena's Pride wasn't its first victim. The Pevek wasn't its first victim. How many ships had vanished in Arctic waters over the centuries, attributed to storms or ice, when really they'd been hunted by something that shouldn't exist? Meanwhile, the families of the 15 crew members were struggling with a grief that had no precedent. How do you mourn someone who was killed by a creature from the age of dinosaurs? How do you process that kind of death? Marcus Johansen's wife, Ingrid, spoke to the media despite the government's request for silence. "My husband was the most careful man I knew," she said, tears streaming down her face. "He never took risks. He respected the ocean, and something from the depths, something that shouldn't exist, killed him and 14 other good people. We deserve answers." The Danish and Greenlandic governments formed a joint task force to address the family's concerns and to investigate the broader implications. If one of these creatures existed, could there be more? The sonar signatures that had been detected in the days after the attack, were those other creatures, or just echoes and false readings? Dr. Sørensen reviewed all the sonar data personally. On September 12th, she presented her findings to the task force. "We detected 3 additional signatures that match the size and movement patterns of the creature we killed," she said. "I can't say with certainty that they were the same species, but the probability is high. These creatures may be part of a small surviving population in deep Arctic waters, possibly in areas we rarely survey." The fishing communities demanded action. They wanted the waters hunted, the creatures found and killed. But the Danish Navy pushed back. The first hunt had cost millions and nearly resulted in a naval vessel being damaged when the creature got too close. Hunting more of them would require resources they didn't have and posed risks that couldn't be justified unless there was another attack. So they waited. The Coast Guard increased patrols. Fishing vessels were given strict instructions to report any unusual sonar contacts, any strange disturbances in the water. Marine biologists set up listening stations to monitor underwater acoustics. They were looking for signs of these creatures' presence, their movements, their behaviors, and that's when the investigation took a turn no one expected. On September 19th, Dr. Sørensen's team was still analyzing tissue samples from the creature when one of her junior researchers, a geneticist named Mikkel Thorsen, made a discovery that would reframe everything. The creature's DNA was old, not just evolutionarily ancient, but the cells themselves showed signs of extreme age. Mikkel estimated the creature had been alive for at least 200 years, possibly longer. These things weren't just holdovers from the age of dinosaurs. They were individuals that had survived for centuries, probably by living in the deepest, coldest parts of the Arctic Ocean, where they could go into states of reduced metabolism, almost hibernation, for years at a time. "They're ambush predators," Dr. Sørensen explained to the task force. "They probably spend most of their lives in deep water, conserving energy, hunting only when opportunity presents itself. The Helena's pride was in the wrong place at the wrong time. The creature was probably near the surface feeding on fish when it detected the boat above it, an easy meal from its perspective. 15 humans provided more calories than it would normally consume in months of hunting seals or fish. But here's what haunted everyone involved in the investigation. If these creatures had been living in Arctic waters for centuries, hunting occasionally, going undetected most of the time, how many unexplained disappearances could be attributed to them? How many ships marked as lost to weather or ice had actually been attacked? The maritime history of the Arctic was full of mysteries. Now those mysteries had teeth. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. On October 3rd, a fishing captain named Bjorn Mikkelsen contacted the Coast Guard with information he'd been sitting on for weeks. Back in July, 2 months before the Helena's Pride attack, his boat had experienced something strange. They'd been fishing about 90 miles north of Nuuk when his sonar picked up something massive moving beneath them. At first he thought it was a whale, but the shape was wrong. Too long, too narrow. The object had paced his boat for about 10 minutes, staying at a depth of around 400 feet, then suddenly dove straight down and disappeared. Bjorn hadn't reported it because, honestly, who would believe him? But after the Helena's Pride attack and all the news coverage, he realized what he'd probably encountered. The Coast Guard immediately pulled his boat's sonar logs and sent them to Dr. Sørensen's team. The signature was a match. Same size, same movement pattern. Bjorn had encountered one of these creatures and lived to tell about it, probably because his boat kept moving and didn't present an easy target. Dr. Sørensen started pulling maritime records from across the Arctic. She was looking for any reports of unusual sonar contacts, strange sightings, boats reporting near misses with unknown objects. What she found was disturbing. Over the past 20 years, there had been at least 40 reports of unexplained sonar contacts matching the size and behavior of the creature that had killed the Helena's Pride crew. Most had been dismissed as equipment malfunctions or whale misidentifications. But when you plotted them on a map, a pattern emerged. The contacts clustered in 3 areas: the waters off eastern Greenland where the attack had occurred, a region north of Iceland, and a stretch of ocean east of Svalbard. These weren't random encounters, these were hunting territories. Dr. Sorensen estimated there could be anywhere from 5 to 20 individual creatures living in Arctic waters, each maintaining its own territory, each capable of the same devastating attack that had killed 15 people in seconds. This is where Johan Eriksson's helmet camera footage became critical to understanding not just what had happened, but how to prevent it from happening again. Dr. Sorensen's team analyzed every frame of that footage, studying the creature's behavior, its body language, the way it moved. They noticed something crucial. Before the creature dove after encountering the helicopter, it had opened its mouth slightly. The remains of the Helena's Pride crew were still visible, but the creature's tongue, a massive muscular structure, had moved, almost like it was preparing to swallow. The attack had been so recent that the creature hadn't even finished consuming its prey. It had grabbed the entire crew in one strike, probably when they were gathered on one side of the deck, responding to the first signs that something was wrong. The boat had capsized from the force of the impact, tilting the deck at just the right angle for the creature's jaws to close over the starboard side, where everyone had instinctively moved. 8 seconds. That's all it took. 8 seconds for a predator that had been hunting these waters for possibly 200 years to execute a perfect ambush. The Danish Navy wanted to mount another hunt, to try to locate and eliminate the other creatures. But the Greenlandic government pushed back. These were, despite the tragedy, possibly the only living members of a species thought extinct for millions of years. Killing them all would be an ecological catastrophe. The argument went back and forth for weeks, with marine biologists, government officials, and fishing industry representatives all weighing in. In the end, a compromise was reached. The waters where the attack occurred and the 2 other identified hunting territories would be designated as exclusion zones. Fishing vessels would be banned from these areas. Coast Guard patrols would be increased. Any vessel that entered an exclusion zone would do so at its own risk, and a warning system would be implemented using deep water acoustic monitoring. But Dr. Sorensen wasn't satisfied. She knew that these creatures didn't respect exclusion zones. They could travel hundreds of miles when they wanted to. The only way to truly protect people was to understand these animals better, their behavior, their range, their life cycle. She proposed a long-term monitoring program using submersible drones and acoustic arrays to track the creature's movements without putting human lives at risk. On November 8, 2018, the first drone was deployed in the waters where the Helena's Pride had been attacked. It was equipped with cameras, sonar, and sensors designed to detect electrical fields generated by living creatures. For 3 days, the drone captured footage of the ocean floor at depths of up to 2,000 feet. And then, on the 4th day, it found something. A cave system carved into an underwater cliff face, about 1,500 feet down. The cave entrance was nearly 40 feet across. The drone's cameras couldn't penetrate far into the darkness, but they captured thermal signatures. Something large and warm-blooded was inside. The drone backed away slowly, not wanting to provoke whatever was in there. But as it retreated, something emerged from the cave. Another creature. Different from the one they'd killed. Smaller, maybe 40 feet long with darker coloration. It swam past the drone without attacking, heading up toward shallower water. The drone followed at a safe distance, capturing footage of the creature as it hunted seals near an ice shelf, taking them with the same shocking speed and precision that had killed the Helena's Pride crew. Dr. Sorensen now had confirmation. These creatures weren't extinct. They were just very good at staying hidden, and they'd been sharing the Arctic Ocean with humans for as long as humans had been sailing these waters, occasionally taking a boat, occasionally taking lives, but mostly remaining in the depths where no one would ever see them. The footage of the cave system and the second creature was immediately classified by the Danish government. Public knowledge of multiple creatures could cause panic and devastate the fishing industry. But the families of the Helena's Pride crew deserved to know the truth. In a private meeting on November 15th, Dr. Sorensen showed them everything: the necropsy results, the genetic analysis, the drone footage, all of it. Ingrid Johansen, Marcus's widow, asked the question everyone was thinking: How do we make sure this never happens again? We can't, Dr. Sorensen admitted. Not completely. These animals have been here longer than we have. They were hunting in these waters when our ancestors were still learning to build boats. All we can do is understand them better, respect their territory, and be more careful about where we fish. The Helena's Pride attack changed Arctic maritime operations forever. The exclusion zones remain in effect, and while some fishing captains grumble about lost territory, most respect the boundaries. There have been no attacks since September 2018, though there have been several sonar contacts with large unidentified objects in the deep waters of the Arctic Ocean. Dr. Astrid Sorensen continues her monitoring program. As of 2024, she's documented at least 7 individual creatures living in Arctic waters, possibly more. They've been given scientific designations, specimens A through G, but among the fishing communities, they're just called the dragons. People don't like to talk about them much, but everyone knows they're out there. The families of the Helena's Pride crew established a memorial in Nuuk. It lists all 15 names and includes a plaque with a simple message: Lost to the sea, September 3rd, 2018. Gone, but never forgotten. Every year on the anniversary of the attack, the families gather there. Ingrid Johansen still speaks about her husband, about all of them, keeping their memories alive. There were no criminal charges in this case because there was no human perpetrator. You can't prosecute an animal for being what evolution made it. The creature that killed 15 people in 8 seconds was doing what it had probably done hundreds of times before: hunting, feeding, surviving in an environment that would kill most living things. No criminal charges were filed. The incident was officially classified as a fatal wildlife encounter, resulting in 15 deaths. The Danish government sealed most of the case files, but they did release one statement. The attack on the Helena's Pride was a tragedy of unprecedented nature. We now know that we share the Arctic Ocean with apex predators that we barely understand. Our obligation is to the safety of maritime workers, to scientific inquiry, and to respecting the ancient ecology of these waters. Johan Eriksson, the rescue diver whose helmet camera captured that horrifying footage, retired from active duty 6 months after the attack. He still has nightmares about what he saw. People think the scariest thing about the ocean is drowning, he said in one of his few interviews. But that's not it. The scariest thing is knowing that something might be looking up at you from the dark. Something huge, something hungry, something that's been there for hundreds of years, just waiting. The Helena's Pride crew, Marcus Johansen, Eric Johansen, Sophie Nielsen, Thomas Christensen, Peter Hansen, and the 10 other men whose names deserve to be remembered, they were experienced sailors who respected the ocean and understood its dangers. They did everything right. They were just in the wrong place when a predator from another age decided to hunt. Their deaths remind us that for all our technology, for all our knowledge, the ocean keeps its secrets, and some of those secrets have teeth. May they all rest in peace.